Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of history's most bizarre conflicts. A story that honestly sounds like the setup to a joke, but was in fact a very real, full-blown military operation. I mean, it seems like a ridiculous question, right? But back in 1932, Australia found out the very surprising and kind of humbling answer. This is a wild story about desperation, a huge miscalculation, and a feathered foe that was way more formidable than anyone expected. Okay, so to really get how this happened, you first have to meet the opposition. And let me tell you, this was no ordinary bird. The Australian military wasn't up against pigeons here. They were facing the emu, a creature just perfectly, and I mean perfectly, adapted to its environment. 48 kilometers per hour, that is almost 30 miles an hour. Just try to imagine tracking a target moving that fast across the massive open plains of Western Australia. Their speed and agility alone made them an incredibly tough enemy to pin down. And it's not just about the speed. We're talking about a bird that can tower over a full-grown man, armed with these powerful legs and sharp claws, and built for some serious endurance. Even their thick, shaggy feathers acted like a weird kind of natural armor, not just against the blazing sun, but as the soldiers were about to find out, against bullets, too. So you might be wondering, how in the world did this formidable bird end up in the military's crosshairs? Well, the answer lies in this perfect storm of economic disaster and environmental crisis that pushed a community of war veterans right to their breaking point. You see, this whole thing didn't just happen in a vacuum. After World War I, veterans were given plots of pretty marginal land to grow wheat. Then, bam, the Great Depression hits, and wheat prices just fall through the floor. And as if things couldn't get any worse, right as they're getting ready for a tough harvest, a seasonal migration of 20,000 emus shows up, looking at their farms like a giant all-you-can-eat buffet. So, completely desperate, these farmers, a lot of them ex-soldiers, remember, they petition the Minister of Defense. They know what machine guns can do, and they ask for military help. And you know what? The minister, Sir George Pierce, he agreed. He figured it'd be good publicity and, hey, some useful target practice for the troops. The stage was officially set for one of the strangest showdowns in history. And so, in November of 1932, the military went to war. With birds. Seriously, Major G.P.W. Meredith of the Royal Australian Artillery was sent out to the Campion district, and the Great Emu War had officially begun. Now, just look at this matchup. It seems like a total foregone conclusion, right? 2 soldiers, 2 high-tech Lewis machine guns, 10,000 rounds of ammo, versus a bunch of birds. On paper, this should have been a simple pest control mission. But, well, the emus had other ideas. It turns out the emus didn't fight like a conventional army. Oh, no. They were basically masters of guerrilla warfare. When the soldiers opened fire, the giant flock didn't just panic in a predictable way. It instantly split into countless small groups, scattering in every direction. This made the Lewis guns, which are designed to mow down concentrated targets, almost completely useless. And get this, one encounter just perfectly sums up their frustration. The soldiers set up this perfect ambush on over 1,000 emus near a dam, waiting for the perfect shot. They opened fire, and one of their guns jammed. The result? A grand total of 12 emus killed before the rest just melted away into the landscape. 12. You can just feel the shock and, frankly, the grudging respect from the commanding officer. Major Meredith reported that the emus weren't just evasive, they were incredibly tough. Some of them kept running even after being hit. His now famous quote, comparing them to tanks, it just says everything about his growing frustration. The whole operation turned into a public relations nightmare. The media had an absolute field day mocking the Army's failure. With thousands of rounds fired for only a handful of kills, the military really had no choice but to pack it up and go home. Round 1 was a decisive knockout victory for the emus. But the war wasn't over. Not yet. The emus kept destroying the crops, and the farmers, still desperate, renewed their pleas for help. So, pretty reluctantly, the military agreed to come back for round 2. So the second attempt, which kicked off just a few days later, was, well, statistically, it was more successful. As you can see on this chart, the soldiers learned a few things. They managed to bring the rate down from a pretty awful 50 rounds per kill to a much more efficient 10 rounds per kill. And over the next month, they did manage to kill nearly 1,000 emus. But here's the thing. Even with those better numbers, the operation was still a strategic failure. I mean, killing 1,000 emus barely makes a dent when the total population is 20,000. The military couldn't just stay there forever. The fundamental problem was still there. So in the end, the war wasn't won by soldiers and machine guns. It was won by a much smarter and way less dramatic approach. The government put a bounty system in place, which encouraged private hunters who were way more effective. And, most importantly, the farmers adapted. They started building stronger, taller fences to physically keep the emus out. It was an engineering solution, not a military one. So, when you look back at all this, you have to ask, why did the might of a modern military, even on a small scale, fail so completely against a population of flightless birds? The emus won because they didn't play by human rules. It's that simple. Their natural survival instincts, scattering unpredictably, that incredible speed over rough ground, their surprising toughness, it was all the perfect counter-strategy to the military's rigid tactics. The soldiers were basically using a tool designed for trench warfare against an enemy that was fluid, decentralized, and completely at home in its environment. And really, that's the key takeaway here. The Great Emu War is this perfect object lesson. It wasn't really a war. It was a clash between a human system that's built on order and a natural system that thrives on chaos and adaptation. The farmers had a real problem, but they tried to solve this complex ecological issue with a very blunt instrument of military force, and it just didn't work. And so, the story of the Emu War, as funny as it is, it leaves us with a pretty provocative thought, doesn't it? It's a powerful reminder that brute force is often a really clumsy and ineffective tool against complex problems, especially when those problems are deeply tangled up with the natural world. Thanks for watching this explainer. If you enjoyed this story as much as I did, be sure to subscribe to Notebook Summaries and check out our Unusual History Events playlist. We've got more deep dives into the stranger side of the past waiting for you.